Naran, everyone. I apologize for not being on video and not being with you. I'm outside playing chaperone to my son in his class, but I will listen in and chime in if the background noise allows. But it's great to see everyone after so long.
So let's start with Happy Holi, everyone. It's a nice Holi weekend. Unfortunately, we've not played anything, but hopefully next year will be more fun.
Although clearly Nana is celebrating it with her background.
I know. Okay, so in last class, I think we went into great detail around when we start to meditate. Like first of all, we learned how important it is to have a quiet mind to be able to meditate, and then we went into a certain detail about how or what are the 4 stages of quieting the mind through meditation. After that, we went through quite a few shlokas. Actually, last time we did all the way to shloka number 22, where we talked about how moderation is very important, right? Moderation in everything we do is key to this yoga. And this is something that, given the world in which we live in, is something that doesn't come naturally. The world as we live in today forces us to extremes to be able to stand out in some form or the other in this world, right? And it feels like, oh, if you're not we hear of this in so many different ways, right? In HR, we talk of spikes in people, right? People are amazing at one thing, and then whatever, like masters of one. And so that message comes to us in so many different formats. Now, I'm not implying here that you shouldn't go for mastery in one or the other. I mean, mastery will happen. So I'm not talking about that at all. But in terms of how we apply ourselves and where we apply ourselves, why we apply ourselves, moderation is key to certain things. Moderation in eating, moderation in exercise, moderation in recreation, moderation in work, moderation in sleep. All of those are important bedrocks. If we don't get them right and we are constantly in a space of being overextended in one direction, then we're going to snap back. Okay, like a pendulum. However high you go on one side, the extreme will follow on the opposite side as well. So if you overextend on being overworked, then at some point of time you will go on another extreme of not working at all to be able to recuperate, right? So moderation is key. Now I will add another thing on top for us to remember. It is not just moderation, but when we are doing something, especially the practice that we do, the practices that we do, consistency is very important. Consistency over quantity. So instead of something like, we don't exercise for a month and then on one day we'll exercise, or 1 week we'll exercise 1 hour a day, right? That kind of an extreme approach is debilitating actually to our mind, to our bodies. So and that applies to everything in our life, whether it is moderation in eating, whether it is moderation in exercise, whether it's moderation in swadhyay. Consistency is very important with moderation. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of exercise, 5, 10, 15 minutes of swadhyay is more important than 2 hours in one sitting. Okay, that consistency has to be developed and is a very difficult thing. Once consistency comes in, the required quantities will automatically develop. Okay, so our mind needs to be under severe control for us to be able to develop that consistency. Why? Because our mind likes to do likes and dislikes, right? It follows likes and dislikes, and consistency is the first victim to those likes and dislikes. Today I feel like exercising, so I will exercise 1 hour. And then tomorrow I don't feel like it because I want to sleep, or I feel like spending time with family, or I feel like, and our mind has justifications for everything, right? It will couch everything in the form of duties or something. So we have to be very careful of how our mind plays games with us. So consistency is the first thing that goes. Now, consistency doesn't mean every day. depending on what we're talking about. It could be that consistency could be on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, right? Certain things need to be done on a daily basis, like eating has to be done on a daily basis, but there are other things that could have a different level of frequency. But consistency is what we need to keep in mind. Consistency over quantity every single time until we develop that habit. And then the quantities will develop on its own based on what is required. And then the next important thing that we talked about was how when we do these things, our antakaran, as it cleanses the habits, it will be so easy for us to leave things that are not good for us. चीजें छूट जाएंगी, छोड़नी नहीं पड़ेंगी, right? Things will leave us, like when a fruit is ripe, it automatically leaves the tree. Same way, the bad habits will leave us rather than us feeling the pain of getting rid of something. So that is another important thing to so, and you will realize that when we follow the Gita principles in a correct manner, it is an easy path to follow. It is a beautiful path to follow. It does not cause pain. But what is important is that it will never let go of exertion, of effort, right? That will never go away. So laziness has got no place in our lives, whatever we may do, right? Effort has to be there. But otherwise, it is a very easy path to follow, as in it continuously increases the beauty of our experiences in life. And then another thing that we learned was, which is important for us to remember, is that the churning or the change that happens in us through this practice is permanent. It is like churning of milk. Once milk gets churned to butter and that gets churned to ghee, there is no reversal. So once our mind, through meditation, through karma yoga, once our intellect stabilizes, our mind stabilizes, that is irreversible change in our behavior, in our mind, in the state of our mind. It doesn't go back. So that incremental level of quietude, that incremental level of bliss that comes into our life through one action will permeate other aspects of our life. You will never be in a space where you're so that unity of behavior, that unity of being starts to come in, which means that you are no longer, for example, being friend, you're not being a friend to one person or friend to another person, because the changes in your being, you become friendly to every person. That's an example. So you start being a person of a certain kind in every aspect of your life, in every relationship you will show up that way. In every VVGP, you will start to show up as that person, a person with more quietude. Another change that we will experience is, for example, if we were to go and sit near a lake, right? We sit near a very placid, happy lake, and we draw inspiration or quietude from that lake, right? Then what is happening here is that our peace is external to us. My peace is coming from looking at that peaceful lake. The moment, all I have to do is to throw a little rock or a little stone in that thing, and it will create ripples in that external environment, and suddenly I am feeling agitated because the peace is not inside of me, right? My peace is coming from external factors. That is why we are, and that is what happens when we seek peace in our VVGP. We have to strengthen ourselves to a point where we are not seeking the peace from VVGP. We are not seeking peace from that lake. We are so strong that, and we are so peaceful that when we come in front of that lake, which has ripples in it, through our energy that floats outside of us, that lake becomes calm. The peace comes from inside of us, and we go outside, and our people or VVGP interacting with us become peaceful. That is the space where we are moving towards, right? Instead of external to internal, we are going from internal to outside. It requires a lot of practice. Okay, so we'll move to shloka number 23. We'll start from 23 today. Very, very important shloka. It will talk about how transformative the experience of yoga is. So we'll start with Vijay. Would you like to read connection to shloka 23?
Connection to Shloka 22 or 23?
Yeah, connection after Shloka 22.
Okay. The Lord now gives a definite name to this attainment.
And what is the attainment we're talking of? The one in Shloka 22, where he's talking about the fact that there is no gain that is superior to the gain that we get from the practice of yoga, meditative yoga, and how a person, when he gains that, he is not affected by any affliction. How is that happening? How is that going to happen? And why is that so permanent in nature? Why are we saying that the change that happens is like churning of milk to ghee? Why is that change irreversible? We'll now learn in this shloka. Okay. Tam vidyat dukha sanyoga
Tam vidyag dukkha samyoga
viyogam yoga sanjitam
viyogam yoga samjitam
sa nischayena yoktavyah
sa nischayena yoktavyo
yoktavyah
yoktavyaha
yogo nirvinna chetasa.
yogo nirvinna chetasa.
Tam is you. Vidyat is should know or should learn. Dukha sanyoga, association with dukh, association with suffering or affliction. Viyogam is dissociation from it. Yoga sanjitam is definition of yoga. That's the meaning of this word. Definition of yoga or meaning of yoga. Sir, that, nishchayen, must, definitely. Yuktavyaha is the duty to practice. Yuktavyaha is the duty to practice. Yog is yog. Anirvinna chetasa is determined perseverance and undespairing steadiness. Anirvinna chetasa.
Learn the disassociation from the association of affliction, which is called yoga, and practice it with determined perseverance and undespairing steadiness.
So the most important thing that we learn here is we are not, when we practice yoga, we're not just dissociating ourselves from that affliction, from the suffering. So we have these three different sufferings in front of us today, and we practice yoga. We're not just taking ourselves away from these three sufferings that we are suffering from. We are in fact cutting the entire cord, the channel through which the external VVGP sends suffering to us. So basically that entire infrastructure is being dismantled. Because that infrastructure itself gets dismantled, so that suffering from the VVGP doesn't even reach us any longer. Those pipes are being broken down completely. And that is why there is permanence in the dissociation from suffering. So dissociation from association of suffering, of suffering or affliction. That is what is happening. So it is not just that event. It is about the framework itself is being completely transformed. The channels, the pipes, the pathways are being completely broken. And that is why there is this permanence. That is why it is so deep. It works at such a deep level. It is not shallow in its approach or its impact on us. Let's read.
The definition of yoga and dissociation from association of affliction. The Lord says that attainment is called yoga. This yoga is not merely dissociation from affliction, but in this shloka it has been called dissociation from association of affliction. The significance of this definition of yoga is that even connection gets completely snapped, through which any affliction of the world could reach a yogi. Establishing this paramount importance of yoga, the Lord directs the supreme aim of human life is to attain this yoga. The reason is that happiness and unhappiness are experienced by even birds and other animals, but it is exclusive prerogative of human life to attain that supreme bliss, which means serve sever all connections with unhappiness and affliction. It is for this unique attainment that human beings have been endowed with intellect, as distinct from instincts which drive the animal world. It is prime duty of human being to make full use of intellect.
Yeah. So we'll stop here for now. Now, when you try and visualize this, right, it's if your connection to the affliction, to the suffering, to the source of suffering remains, then you're constantly in a space of battle, right? The suffering will come and you have to constantly battle that. And you have to use your intellect to say, oh, why I should not allow this affliction to hurt me or to impact me. Correct? So you're constantly battling, you're constantly in that space of trying to it's like, you know, your doors to your fort are open and enemy is constantly coming in, so you're constantly in a space of battle. So intellect provides you that strength to constantly fight that enemy, but you're still in a space of agitation. If there is battling, then there is agitation, right? And there is no permanence to this. At some point of time, there's always a case where you might get weakened, right? Now what yoga does is that it literally closes the door of the fort, and so there is no further enemy coming in itself. Can you imagine the bliss at that stage? There is nobody to fight because there is nothing that's coming in. That is what we're talking about. Not just that, okay, one suffering after the other is coming in and we are just making sure that our armies are strong enough to constantly fight them. There is no enemy to fight any longer. That is the stage where we are going.
So, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So let me share a story here. In fact, it's a book that I'm currently reading. It's called Unbroken. So it's a true life story about a gentleman who Olympus gold medal, but he got into a plane crash, and he and two others were stuck on a raft. Were stuck on a raft in Pacific Island for 47 days. So they were surrounded by sharks, and they obviously had no food, no water. It was all about survival for them, right? So at about the 44th or 43rd day, you can imagine that a 75 kilo person was now weighing 30 odd kgs. The first, the first few days, of course, hunger was got the better of them. And this guy decided then two things. One, I will pray every day on the raft. He was non-religious, but the other person on the raft was religious. He says, I will pray to God every day at night. And the second thing we'll do is we'll keep our mind sharp, our intellect as sharp as we can. So they started doing quizzes all day long. They would do quizzes, they would look for details, for stories, etc. He said by the 40th day, something happened where they no longer were craving food and water. They were no longer craving sensual things, because they noticed their mind became so sharp, because you had nothing to stimulate them, right? All you had was ocean. There was no stimulation. He said our mind became so sharp, we could hold on to one thought for hours, reflect, mull, etc. At 44th or 45th day, he doesn't use these words in the book, but he says all we experienced was serenity and beauty. The beauty of the ocean, the beauty of the animals, the beauty of the sharks that were trying to attack them. He said it was, and he says in civilization, where we are constantly stimulated, constantly distracted because of the stimulation, we never reach that state. And he says that at the 45th day, they did not feel anything, no hunger, no anger, nothing but just being absolutely one with beauty. It just so happened that 47th day, the 47th day, 2 days later, they reached an island. And it's very interesting because as soon as they saw the island, all those expectations and hope and everything else came in. And of course, the story continues for much longer. But that was a moment in the book which I thought was absolutely beautiful, which we talk about in Gita. But they were able to experience that when their survival was at risk. And that just goes to show the power of the intellect, and directing it can take us to a place beyond what we can imagine.
Thanks, Abhinav. Pretty good story. Yeah. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about. Like, now, how do we get to this attainment? The next part of the shloka.
It is prime duty of human being to make full use of intellect. The Lord has given two directions for this attainment. The first is that it can be attained with dogged perseverance. No purpose would be served by a casual approach. Some people start practicing the discipline with the zeal, but due to lack of sustained effort and self-control, their minds succumb to the temptations of the world and perseverance tapers off. But when faced with some disappointment, they again commence the discipline. No useful purpose can be served by such a wavering approach. The second point stressed by the Lord is about sense of wariness, which sometimes overtakes an aspirant. If this sense of wariness arises at any stage, only the undespairing steadiness of intellect can help the aspirant. Once the stage passes, there remains no obstacle to overcome.
So again, this is what we've been talking about in the last class as well, and what we said in the initial time, right? Consistency over quantity. Whether this is meditation that we are trying to practice, whether it is anything else. And once you develop this quality, you can see, and this is not new, right? We've seen this, heard this in so many different contexts since our school time, right? Perseverance, determination, constant practice, and you see the results everywhere. Anybody who's achieved anything that is of significance in this world, whether it is sports or music or whatever arena, whether it is education or whatever, right? Like anything, it is only through dogged perseverance and unsteadying, wavering of approach. Uh, that is a key. Now, the point is that what happens is, because of our certain tendencies, we tend to like certain things more than we like other things, right? Somebody may enjoy music a lot more, somebody may enjoy dancing, somebody may enjoy painting, somebody may enjoy maths. So we have our own tendencies to like or dislike something. Somebody may like cooking a lot. What happens is that we end up actually doing these two things in those areas and become extremely good at it, right? There are people who spend hours and hours playing Sudoku because they just love playing that Sudoku and how it stimulates them. So they become extremely good at Sudoku, for example, right? Or become extremely good at cooking or dancing or whatever. Even in that approach, the important thing to learn is these two aspects, when put together, will lead to excellence, will lead to something, creation of something amazing. But why does it not then reflect in other parts of our life? Why are we not that person in every aspect? Because in that situation, we are still following our likes and dislikes. I am going to be this person in a space that I like. Why? Because I am not being conscious of what I'm doing. I am not aware of why I am doing this versus everything else. I'm still following my likes and dislikes. When we can do this in a more aware manner, when we can apply these two things with in that state of meditativeness, where we know that we have to do this, when we do it in that fashion, then one, our awareness increases, which means we are in meditation, right? We are connected. We do this with more awareness, then our ability to cross apply it in all other areas of our life increases tremendously. Whether we apply it for exercise, I have to go for a run, or whether we apply it for meditation or my swadhyay, but we are doing this every single time you go against your likes or dislikes, whether it is in how you deal with your colleagues, your work, your children, whatever area. When you do it consciously, you know you do not feel like doing this, but this is the right thing to do. however small or big it may be, and we apply ourselves towards that, we are increasing our mental muscle. We are giving strength to our intellect to control and direct the mind towards the right things. And that awareness, that increment of our intellect, that increment of our mental muscle is going to get reflected in every other aspect of our life slowly. Can you imagine how, if you start being perseverant in every aspect that is the right thing to do in your life, how strongly you will manifest what you want in your life? Currently, the amount of energies that we have, we're like a sun, right? We have so much of energy to give out. We're constantly full of energy. The problem is we are dissipating our energies because we are constantly stimulated and reacting to the stimulations. So a little bit of energy goes here, a little bit of energy goes there, a little bit of energy goes there without us being even aware of it. And then it becomes like sunlight that is benign. It spreads warmth everywhere, but it is not strong enough to say burn a paper, which requires focused, concentrated effort. Once you start becoming aware of where you are putting your energies, what thoughts you're holding on to, instead of holding on to like one thought for 10 seconds, another thought came 10 seconds, another thought came 10 seconds, another thought came 10 seconds, right? Instead of being scattered with your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual energies, you start to focus them towards things that you really want to create. When you really start to focus those energies only on those thoughts that deserve to be held on to, leaving everything else behind, the creative aspect of you, the Brahma in you, is going to be so strengthened, right? That's when you will start to actually create your life consciously. Currently, we are creating our life unconsciously. We are constantly writing software of our lives without being aware. And then we blame everything around us, saying, oh my gosh, like this happened because of this trigger or that trigger. No, we've written our own software without being conscious of it. Now we start writing software more consciously. This is the condition I want to create. And this is the condition how I want to deal with everything that is unwanted in my life. What I don't want, I will not deal with it. I will leave it aside. And this is what I want to indulge my time, energy, thoughts into. Okay. And this is where our meditative practice comes into being. This is what gets sharpened through meditation. Okay.
I just wanted to add one quick this thing here. If you can remember Sai Ram's photo, it will be helpful because behind Sai, it's Shraddha and Saburi. So for any action that we take, there is going to be efforts and the faith and the work that we are going to do, the hard work that we are going to do. That's what is going to bring us to the attainment.
Correct. So everything we have, we create in our lives, 99% is our effort and 1% is his grace. But his grace will have an impact only when we've done our work. 99% of that work has to be ours. His grace is always there. We're not always able to capture that grace because we're not putting in enough effort in that particular direction that we need to do. Go on. Rituj, will you do the next one for us?
Yes. In the practice of Dhyan Yoga, there is a distinct category of those persons who want to be completely one with the supreme transcendence. For such persons, the Lord says,
Sankalpa Prabhavan Kamam.
Sankalpa Prabhavan Kaman Kamam
Tyaktva Sarvanashetaha
Tyaktva Sarvana Sheshatah
Manasaivendriya Gramam
Manasevendriya Gramam
Vinayamya Samantataha
Vinayam Samantatah
Vinayamya Samantataha.
Vinayamya Samantatah.
Sankalp is the sankalp, the volition, the free will. Right? Prabhavan, created by, उत्पन्न होने वाले, created by. Kamam is desires. So Sankalpa Prabhavan Kamam is desires that are born out of the exercise of free will. Tyaktva is by giving up. Sarvan, all. Asheshataha is without holding back, without any reservations, in a complete manner. Mana is by mind. Manas by mind. A Indriya Gramam is the group of senses. Viniyamya, rokkar, restraining or stopping. Samantataha, from all directions. Har taraf se, from all directions.
Abandoning without reserve all desires born out of volition, exercise of free will, and completely restraining the group of senses with the mind.
The next one. Shana Shana Rupam Shana Shana Rupa Rameda Rupa Rameda. Shana Shana Rupa Rameda.
Shane Shane Rupa Ramedava Tava
Yeah, Rameda. Buddhaya Dhrati Grahitaya.
Buddhaya Dhriti Grahitaya
Atma Samsthamana Kritva.
Atma Sanstam Manaha Kritva
Na Kinchitapi Chintayet.
Na Kinchidapi Chintaye.
Shana Shana is slowly, slowly. Uparamet is rising above dualities. So when we rise above dualities, it leads to quietude. Literally, it means rising above dualities. Buddhaya is intellect. Dhriti. Dhriti is fortitude. And what does fortitude gives us? The ability to retain something. So when you learn something, after that, how much you retain of it depends on the quality of your dhriti. What is the strength with which you can hold on to something that you have learned or you have consumed? That is dhriti, fortitude. Dhriti grahitaya. So with perseverance and with dharya, what do you control, right? So dhriti grahitaya. Atma is self. Samsthatam is being situated in, or Atma Sansthatam would mean absorbed in self, being situated in self, being established in self, capital S self. Mana is mind. Kritva, by doing so. Na kinchitapi chintayet. Chintayet is chintan karna, dwelling on thoughts. Na kinchidapi. Na is not. Kinchit. Any, at all, even a little bit.
Let quietude be attained gradually, with the intellect steadied by fortitude, and with the mind absorbed in the self, let no thoughts arise at all. Complete unity with the self by Dhyan Yoga. The attainment described above is also achieved by Dhyan Yoga. In this process, too, all desires are completely renounced and the senses are withdrawn from their objects. By gradual practice, the intellect is made one with the supreme transcendence. The mind has the nature of becoming one with the object of his contemplation. By contemplation of the self, the mind becomes one with him.
Yeah.
About this
Right?
unified identity, the poet Kabir says, when I was, God was not. Now God is, I am not. The lane of love is narrow indeed. Both God and I cannot traverse it together.
Mhm. So this is something that we had read this right before, that mind is not chanchal. It is not mind that is unsteady. Mind is movable. We read this in last class, right? Mind is movable, but if you're constantly, it's like a cycle, right? Cycle is movable. If you're constantly pedaling it, it will move, but that doesn't make the cycle unsteady or constantly wavering or constantly moving. It is movable. It is the energy that gets applied to it that makes it move. Add to that what we read in chapter 2. In chapter 2, we read that we read about the slippery slope to hell. What is the slippery slope to hell? We start to think about something, right? When we think about something, the thoughts, everything starts from thoughts. We have a thought, we think about it, that thought gets converted into a longing. We think more about it, that longing becomes a desire. When a longing becomes a desire, we start to put actions behind that. And through those actions, we start to pursue those desires. An expectation gets built in, and we start to get attached to those desires and the end outcomes of the actions being taken thus far. At some point of time, those actions will not be met with the desired end result, right? Because it may not be the first desire, but second desire, third desire, fourth desire. At some point of time, there is going to be a limit to the desires that we can fulfill. The moment our desire does not get fulfilled, it will lead to anger. Anger leads to smriti nash. It causes our remembrance to be completely destroyed. So we do not anymore have a discernment of what is right, what is wrong. And once that happens, we start to take actions that are self-sabotaging. That's how we then destroy our own selves. So it all starts with the thoughts that we indulge ourselves in. Very, very important. So we need to have a control over what we think about. Then we had, at the start of this chapter, we had talked about how there are constantly thoughts that are running in our mind, right? It's called sphurna. Sphurna is the flow of thoughts. Typically, an average adult has 60,000 thoughts that flow through us on a daily basis. And a lot of these thoughts, in fact, all of those thoughts are not born inside of us. There are no new thoughts. These thoughts are swirling around us and they come to us through our VVGP. There are some thoughts we hold on to and there are others we let go constantly. What are the thoughts that we hold on to? The thoughts that are in line with our tendencies, our sanskars. We automatically hold on to them. We start thinking about them. And because all of us have slightly different sanskars, the same VVGP impacts us and causes different feelings, thoughts in all of us, slightly differently, right? And our takeaways are slightly different. For example, every class, the takeaway for everyone will be slightly different, right? So it is our tendencies that cause us to latch onto something and not latch onto anything else. So what does that mean? It is being done in an unconscious manner. We're not in control of what we hold on to and start thinking about and start dwelling on, correct? And because of this tendencies, the likes and dislikes, they then start to create our life around us through our actions. When we start doing meditation and we start to become one with the Lord, that means our thoughts start to dwell on that, on Paramatma, right? That means that we can change consciously, we can start to change what our mind holds on to. Instead of holding on to the material objects, material thoughts of likes and dislikes, thoughts of I don't like this person, I don't like that person, I don't like this, I don't like that. Instead of that, focus on Paramatma, and that will create that bliss. In a more practical manner, what is important is what we think about. If you don't want to create something, you cannot not think about something by thinking about it. That is why in a lot of places you will hear stuff like, do not use negative things. You talk positively rather than negatively. Don't say, I don't want to create this. Talk about what you want to create because your mind is thinking about it. So I should not be talking to Vedant by saying, don't come into the living room because mama daddy are doing Gita class. The only thing going on in his mind is Gita class, living room, don't go there. Now, if he's constantly thinking about it, his propensity to come here will be far higher. Instead, tell him, stay in your room, read your books, do this coloring. So talk about what you want to create and not about what we don't want to create. So what is another application of this principle in our life? Do not operate from fear. Operate from optimism of what you want to create. If you are in a situation, if you're constantly thinking about from a space of fear, space of anxiety, then all you are dwelling on is what you do not want to create. I don't want this to happen. I don't want that to happen. Eventually, that's exactly what you will manifest, because that's all that is going on in your mind constantly. Instead, if you focus on what you want to create, you will create. And of course, it doesn't mean that you negate your fears. Think about your fears. Think about what you want to limit there. How are you going to deal with your fears? How are you going to deal with those negative circumstances in a positive way? This is how I will limit. This is what my positive action is going to be to limit this circumstance, to limit this outcome. If this outcome happens, this is how I will deal with it. Talk about it in your positive action format. And then focus on what you want to create now. You've limited your downside, or you know how you will deal with your worst case scenarios in a strong manner. What is the worst that can happen? This is what is going to happen, and this is how I will deal with it. Instead of saying, oh my God, I don't want this to happen. Oh my God, I don't want this to happen. No, it can happen. There's a probability. Fine. How will I deal with it if this happens? Okay. Once you have taken care of your negative tail risk, now let's focus on your positive side. How are you going to focus on creating that positive outcome on your life? And only think about that. Dwell on that positive outcome. Your actions, your thoughts, your behaviors, your feelings, everything will start to manifest what you think about. Okay. So that's how we should be thinking. What are your thoughts dwelling on will create your reality very, very strongly. So let's focus on that. Okay. Now this is, what the poet Kabir says, right? He says, Prem ki gali ati sankri. The path of love is very, very narrow. Two people can't walk in it. Only one person can. It's either you or me. If I am there, you cannot be, because then I am only thinking about myself. And if you are there, then I cannot be, because then I'm only thinking about you and your welfare. If I'm thinking about you and your welfare, I automatically, if I'm subsumed in you, then I am happy too. We experience this in a lot of different aspects of our life. If you have a little treat left and your child or your parents or your loved one wants to have it, you are not going to fight over that with that loved one. You're very happy to let your child have it, because his happiness causes your happiness. We experience that in that sense, right? Then it is not about me and my child. It is about that child alone. His happiness causes my happiness. So we experience that. Now, being able to expand that to a larger part of our consciousness is something that becomes available through meditation. And we will dwell deeper into this particular aspect that I just talked about in later, like I think Shlok 28, 29, we will get deeper into this part too.
Many aspirants must have noted that howsoever the mind is concentrated on God, every time it is attracted towards objects of the senses. The reason does not lie in the restless nature of the mind. It results from keeping the mind involved in the objects of the senses for a long time. Then there are several worldly assumptions which are held fast in the mind. As a result, whenever the practice of any discipline is pursued, the mind runs after the sense objects on account of its long association with them.
Yeah. So concentration on Lord, right? Concentration on Lord does not necessarily mean only one thing, which is around focus on an idol. Okay. That is one way in which you can focus on the Lord. But ultimately, when you're focusing on the Lord through whatever means it may be, whether it is Swadhyay, whether it is Nam Jap, whether it is Puja, whether it is an idol worship, whether it is non-idol worship, whether it is worship of the elements, ultimately, what does it mean? Ultimately, it means that we have to adhere to the principles that are laid down by the Lord. Okay, that is very important. Otherwise, everything becomes ritualistic in its nature. We're not talking about rituals. Rituals are one way for us to remind ourselves of what is important. What is important? Tattva Gyan. Tattva Gyan, the real nature of this world, the laws of this world, the real truth behind this world. Okay, that's what we need to focus on. That is what is mind being focused on the Lord, which means mind is focused on the principles that have been laid down by the Lord. When we pray to God, we are praying to invoke the God inside of us. We are praying to invoke to be steadfast to the laws that are true in this world. Okay, so but every time we are focusing, we are trying to learn, we are trying to remember those principles, our mind will then constantly go away from those to what we are used to, whatever we are habitual to. That is why it is always said, whenever we are in stress, whenever we are in stress, we are going to run back to what we know best. When you squeeze an orange, only orange juice will come out of it. Apple juice cannot come out of an orange. Okay, so we have to practice in peacetime. Swadhyay or meditation or anything else that we do is practice in peacetime to be ready for wartime. A lot of people say this, there's a misconception that happens, right? I am very agitated, so I want to sit down for meditation and calm myself down. That will never happen. Never happen. I can guarantee you. You try in a space of when you're angry, when you're agitated, sit down to do meditation. I guarantee you not even 5 minutes you can meditate. Because meditation is not something that will happen when you're agitated. Meditation has to be done in the time of peace, when you are calm. When you are calm, you will be able to meditate. You don't meditate to become calm. It's a very big misconception out there. Meditate to calm down. No, you only get to meditate when you are calm. That is why when everything is going around us in a proper fashion, when it is all normal, when it is all okay, when it is good times for us, is the time to read Gita, is the time to practice Gita in the small things of our life. It is the time to do Swadhyay, because when that war hits, you will have no time for Swadhyay. You will have no time to meditate. But all the meditation you have done in your calm time has increased your capacity to be calm. And when the wartime hits, you will realize your capacity to stay calm in that more worried, agitating situation has increased tremendously. And you will recognize that your ability to apply the principles of Gita in tough times has increased tremendously. You get it? So you don't get to, you don't go and, what do you call it? Kuan pyas, jab pyas lagti hai tab kuan nahi khodte, right? When you are thirsty is not when you go and start digging a well. The time of digging a well is much before you are actually thirsty and when you need that water. That is why Swadhyaya on a daily basis is so important, remembrance. And when I say Swadhyaya, it is not about Shravan. It is not about reading. It is Shravan, Manan, Nidhi, Dhyasan. We hear, we read, and then we have to contemplate every single day in every single situation of our lives. Contemplate, are we applying Gita principle in this moment? And then Nidhi Dhyasan. Did I fail? Did I succeed? I failed. Why did I fail? What happened? How can I improve? What will I do differently? Can I visualize that situation again with the correct behavior pattern and visualize it over and over and over again? Visualize myself applying the right principles, being a different person in the same situation. That is Nidhi Dhyasan. That is Swadhyay. Not reading Gita, not reading 2 shlokas of Gita is not Swadhyay. Doing Namjap is not Swadhyay. It is the first step of Swadhyay. It has to translate into contemplation and application. Has to transform into Manan and Nidhi Dhyasan. That is real Swadhyay. Yeah. And that has to happen when we are in a space where there aren't very big emergencies pushing us. This is the time to practice. This is the time, like in army, they say, the more you sweat on the practice ground, the less blood will flow when there is a war. That's something that we need to practice. Okay.
There were two things that I wanted to add here. So one is, it's what Reena was saying, is that some of the benefits of meditation, no, you will not see it for yourself. So just like you go to the gym, right? Or like you have a son, we have a son. We can't tell if he's getting taller and taller and taller every day. But when somebody else comes and looks at him, they will immediately notice he's become taller. Or when you go to the gym and you work out, you can't necessarily tell how I lost weight today, or I've put on muscle on my bicep, or my back has become stronger. No. But when you come to a situation where you need to be fit, you know your body will be fitter. And over a period of time, when you look back at yourself, you're like, oh, yeah, I feel much fitter. I look much fitter. That means all the work I've been doing on a daily basis has helped. It's the same thing with meditation. There are no immediate results, but as and when you keep doing it, either you will have other people come and say, hey, I can see you're responding very differently. Your own partner telling you maybe you're responding very differently to the same situation. Or you will come to a moment and say, hey, I dealt with this situation so differently because you're doing that constant reflection, or maybe Vidyasana as Srina was saying. There was a second point, but I can't remember now. So please continue.
Yeah. And now we will in the next shloka read like, okay, so the mind constantly goes after what our sanskars push it towards. So how do we get it back? The very next shloka tells us how to do that. How do we control?
Rohina, just a quick question. Do you have the actual original phrases of poet Kabir? Because I don't think the translation did the justice out here. Do you have that access? Because
I can send it to you on the chat right after the class.
yeah, it is wonderfully loaded, right? Like when I as in me with all the ego, when I am there, God is not there. When I is gone, God is there. So
Correct.
when my ego is decimated, that's where I'm. I is again the same self with but the God version of
Absolutely.
ourselves. It's like very loaded, wonderful phrases. So that's what I was trying.
Absolutely. And this is how you know that once you are able to see everybody in you, right, with that evenness of mind, you cannot, under any circumstance, maintain that sense of individuality any longer. Then you are one with the world. And if you have a sense of me being distinct from everyone else, then there is no way for you to be one with the world. Then you cannot say that I'm able to see Lord in everything and everybody. There's no way for these to coexist. It's either here or there.
I've just taken out the Hindi Bhagavad Gita, so I have that shlok. Should I read it out loud for the class? If you,
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. That would be wonderful.
Okay.
जब मैं था तब हरि नहीं, अब हरि है मैं नहीं, प्रेम गली अति सांकरी, या मैं दो न समाही.
इसमें two people cannot. प्रेम की गली अति सांकरी. The lane of the love is very narrow. या में दो नहीं समाही. In this, two cannot coexist together. Two cannot stand here together. Only one can. So when I was there, Lord wasn't, and when I'm not there, the Lord is. If the Lord is there, then I'm not there.
Thank you, Rituj. I appreciate that.
Okay, we'll go to the next shloka. Kakuli, will you read with us?
Yeah. The method of restraining the mind is now explained.
Yato yato nischarati.
Yato yato nischarati.
Manaschanchalam asthiram.
Manaschanchalam asthiram.
Tatastato niyam yaitata.
Tatastato niyam yaitata.
Atmanyeva vasham nayet.
Atmanyeva vasham nayet.
Yato is just, wherever. Nischarati, wanders. Manas is mind. Chanchal is excitable. Asthiram is unsteady. Tata, us. That basically everywhere there where it goes from that. Niyam really means control or restrain, but here it is saying by stopping and bringing back again and again. Niyamya tata. By controlling, by stopping and bringing back again and again. This is what that term means. Niyamya tata. Atmanyeva, in the self, capital S self. Vasham, control or restrain. Nayet is do, just do control.
To whichever place the restless and unsteady mind wanders, it should be brought back from there under the control of the self.
So, nothing but abhyas yoga, practice. Practice makes a man perfect. There is no other way out. There are no shortcuts in this world, right? So, mind will wander. You have developed certain tendencies over a period of time. It will run after because of those tendencies. Keep bringing it back. Patience, perseverance, and practice. There is no other shortcut. And don't get frustrated with yourself. Don't blame yourself. Don't be upset with yourself. Just become aware. Yes, it has now run away. Let me get it back. Oh, now I'm running after this desire. Get it back. I'm feeling agitated. Why am I feeling agitated? Figure out what is the expectation that I have developed and have attached myself to. Remove yourself from that expectation. Give it up in that moment. Come back to your space of equanimity. There is no other shortcut. That is why nidhi dhyasan and contemplation. Every time you feel any bout of negativity on a daily basis, at any point of time during the day, ask yourself what's happening. Manan, contemplate what is happening. And then practice to detach you. Practice to first figure out why negativity, what is the expectation behind this negativity that has got frustrated. Let that expectation go. Let any expectation from yourself also go of I should be doing this or I should be this person. Let that expectation also go. Forgive yourself. Bring yourself back to equanimity. Practice. Whether it is in the moment of meditative exercise where you're sitting down to meditate, or whether it is a continuous contemplative meditation that you're doing on a daily basis by seeing yourself or being aware of yourself every second of the day. Okay. Abhyas yoga, very important.
Practice is nothing but continuous effort. It is expected that in the beginning of the practice of a discipline, the mind is likely to wander towards those objects to which it has been long accustomed. In this shloka, the Lord says that whenever this happens, it should be brought back from the objects and placed under the control of the self with the help of the intellect. This practice is called Abhyas Yoga or the yoga of practice. Experienced persons say that in time such a practice results in restraining the mind. In fact, discipline is nothing but harnessing the mind.
Right. Nena, will you read the next one?
Lord now describes the condition of the yogi who becomes inseparably one with God.
Prashanta manasam yenam
Prashanta manasam yenam
yoginam sukhamuttamam
yoginam sukhamuttamam
upaiti shantarajasam
upaiti shantarajasam
brahmabhutam kalmasham.
brahmabhutam akalmasham.
Prashanta manasa is completely peaceful mind. Prashant. Prashant is not just shant, it is prashant. Completely peaceful mind. Hyenam, he is because, kyunki, enam is this, because this, hyenam. Yoginam, such a yogi. Sukham uttamam, sukham, bliss. Uttamam, of the highest nature, of the highest quality. Upayati is प्राप्त होता है, attains to. Shant rajasam, rajas is the rajogun. Shant rajas is whose rajogun is subdued or has been quietened. Brahma Bhutam is one with God, one with Brahma. Kalmasham is not tainted with, a kalmasham is not tainted with sin.
Supreme bliss is attained by the yogi whose mind is quiet, peaceful, and whose Rajoguna has been subdued, who is free of any sin and who is unified with the Supreme Self.
Mhm.
The bliss experienced by the unified being. In this shloka, stress has been laid on subduing Rajoguna. This is a very important point. Ordinarily, contemplation of pleasures of the world and a desire to obtain them makes the mind restless, which then activates the senses in making efforts to obtain them. As explained in Shloka 37 of chapter 3, such motivated efforts are due to the force of unbridled dynamism called Rajoguna, which is one of the gunas of nature. Therefore, in this shloka, emphasis has been laid on subdual of Rajoguna or dynamism. So long as the mind is under the influence of Rajoguna, it continues contemplating the pleasures of the world and in motivated efforts to obtain them. In such a condition of the mind, being established in the self cannot be even imagined. As soon as Rajoguna or dynamism of the mind is subdued, a wave of bliss runs through it.
So, first most important thing, what does subduing Rajoguna mean? And before that, what is Rajogun? So we know that this entire Maya, this entire world is made of three gunas: Satogun, Rajogun, Tamogun. All three of them are extremely important, without which this world will not exist at all. So Satogun, so Rajogun out of all of this is a dynamic guna. Everything that we do happens because of Rajogun. If we do not have Rajogun, you won't be able to do any of your karma yoga. Okay, so we are and consistently everywhere, right? Abhyas yoga, we just read. Can we do Abhyas yoga without Rajogun being there? Cannot, right? Everything, your karma yoga, the basis of that is what? Your Rajogun. So subduing Rajogun does not mean weakening Rajogun. You cannot weaken Rajogun and be in action. Subduing Rajogun really implies that it becomes it is driven. It is not the driver of everything, but in fact, it is being driven by Satogun on top. The car of life has three passengers: Rajogun, Satogun, and Tamogun. Who is the driver of the car is important. Satogun should be the driver, and the other two should be the passengers and should do what is required at the behest of Satogun. That is what is meant by subduing Rajogun. Rajogun and Tamogun have to be strong, but not directing the actions. They should be acting on the directions of Satogun. So, what is the difference between the two? The difference in your actions is going to be like this. If Rajogun is in the driver's seat, then you will end up being in a space of constant activity. You're in a space of where you will end up creating a lot of useless activity. The busy work gets created in that space. There is no calmness. There is no space of quietness. You are indulging in actions for the sake of indulging in actions, because you cannot be at peace with yourself. So you're constantly distracting yourself with a multitude of actions. When Rajogun is instead a passenger being driven by Satogun, then Satogun will determine the purpose of any activity before indulging in it. Am I supposed to react to the situation? Should I respond, or should I just let this event go? Let this trigger go. No need to respond. Should I do some activity or not is determined by Satogun. When Satogun determines this activity needs to be done, it should get Rajogun at its behest and go do something. What does such a graph look like? Periods of quietude, activity, 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 quietude, activity, quietude, activity. Okay. In a case, Rajogun is in the driver's seat, activity, 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 continuous, reckless activity. There is no quietness of the mind. There is no time to even think why I'm doing something. I'm constantly in a reactionary mode. I'm reacting to the world around me. And this needs to be quietened down. This is what needs to be subdued. Right? That is what is called subduing of Rajogun. And when it is unbridled, we've read in this chapter 3, Shloka 37, right? This is one of those important shlokas we had read. Kama esha, krodha esha. These are the ones that are the cause of all our problems. Kam and krodh. And where does Kam and krodh come from? They come from unbridled Rajogun. When all we are doing, when our mind is constantly involved in the thoughts of material nature, then I hold on to those thoughts, and when I hold on to those thoughts, eventually I get onto the path of hell, the slippery slope to hell. Let me see if I can read that shloka 37. Kam esha krodha esha. Kam esha krodha esha rajo guna samudbhava. Kam and krodha born out of the rajogun. Mahashano mahapapma. They are the biggest sinner and the all-consuming sinners. Vidyena miha varinam, and know them to be your biggest enemies. Know them to be your biggest enemies. Kam and krodh, desire and the anger. And they are both born out of Rajogun. And Rajogun is very close to Tamogun. Because the moment you are in Rajogun, and then you get into this Kam, when you get into the krodh activity, you will get into a space of Tamogun. Because that will get expressed either in the form of aggression, or it will go in the form of passive aggression. Both of them are going to be tamogun, or they will paralyze you. Paralysis is again bad form of tamogun, right? So we got to have satogun in the driver's seat. We need to know why we are doing something. The purpose behind all our activity must be predetermined. Otherwise, stay calm. Next slow. Bhagishri, will read.
Explaining this stage in a yogi's life, the Lord says,
Yunjanevam sadatmanam.
Yunjanevam sadatmanam.
Yogi vigata kalmashaha.
Yogi vigata kalmashaha.
Sukhena brahma sansparsham.
Sukhena brahma sansparsham.
Atyantam sukhamashnate.
Atyantam sukhamashmate.
Yunjanaiva. Yunjan is lagata hua, or concentrating or focusing. Evam, like this. Sada, always. Atmanam, connected with self. Always connected with self. Yogi, vigata kalmashaha, free from sins. Sukhena is happily. Brahma sansparsham, contact with Brahma. Atyantam, atyant is beyond or infinite. Sukham, anand. Here sukham means anand, the bliss. Ashnute, anubhav karta hai, experiences.
Concentrating the mind in this manner, the yogi, freed from all taint of sins, happily enjoys the infinite bliss of contact with the Supreme Self. The happy passage of the unified yogi. In this shloka, reference has been made to happy enjoyment of the bliss of oneness with the Supreme Self. All enjoyment of the world suffer from the taint of unhappiness. The reason is that enjoyment of the world is with reference to some person, some event, or some circumstance. Everybody's world is composed of these three constituents. Careful thought would reveal the impermanence of these three constituents which keep on changing. The circumstances of life are subject to change. The cycle of events goes on revolving, and association and dissociation with persons also keep on occurring. Happiness and unhappiness pursue each other in an unending cycle, and happiness of a few moments is followed by unhappiness. But one who is in a unified identity with the Supreme Self experiences the bliss along with a happy enjoyment of the changing panorama of life, because the mind is not attached to any impermanent entity. Such a person remains unified with the harmonious perfection of the self.
So we've gone through this before, where we've said the enjoyment that we experience with the material objects through VVGP, how does that happen, right? And what is why is every happiness tainted, as it's tainted with unhappiness? It's because, first of all, the exertion that is done in achieving something and achieving an outcome and achieving a thing or whatever, it happens with a lot of extra hard, strenuous effort that comes with it. And there is constant worry. What if my effort does not, what if my effort fails? What if I don't get it, right? There's constant worry and anxiety that goes with that effort. Effort is a given, right? Effort is a given in this world. We've seen that whatever we do, effort is a given. But that effort is constantly tinged with anxiety, with fears, which rob us of peacefulness and happiness in that effort, in that journey towards that goal. So there is unhappiness all the way to getting that goal. We get that thing, and then there is that moment of happiness. Why is that moment of happiness? It is not because we have acquired it. It is because when we have acquired it, there is no more desire left for that moment inside of us. As soon as that desire goes, the fog that is created between us and our real self because of that desire, that is lifted. In that moment of no desire, we are connected with our real self and we experience happiness from within. But because it is in a contextual manner associated with that moment of when we get something, we mistakenly think that that bliss or that happiness we are experiencing is coming because we have got associated with, or because we have gotten that outcome, that person, that thing, that circumstance which you wanted to create. It has been created, and so we are happy, instead of recognizing that the real source of happiness is actually removal of that desire in this instance. Okay, so we mistakenly think that the happiness is coming because of this external VVGP. And once we have gotten it, then again there is this constant anxiety or fear of trying to maintain it. There is this, oh, someday this is going to go. How do I make sure that it doesn't go? Any fear, the moment we feel as if like it's going away, that massive sense of insecurity, a massive sense of abhav comes in. It kicks in immediately and takes away all the happiness that was associated with having or enjoying that circumstance, thing, person, whatever. Right? So the happiness and unhappiness will constantly follow, because whatever we get has to get removed from us, right? Whether it is a person, a circumstance, a thing, whatever comes to us will go away from us as well. Just like day and day will follow night, night will follow day. Association will be followed by dissociation with VVGP. So happiness must constantly be followed by that material unhappiness. And if that is going to happen, then that is why this world, everything is suffering. This world is full of suffering because we suffer through this constant stream of cycles, which doesn't change. Okay. And the person who is not attached to these external circumstances will watch it just like you watch a movie. The scenes will change, the seasons will change, and you will enjoy the beauty of all seasons. You will enjoy the beauty when the cold comes, when there's winter. You will enjoy the beauty of snow, the beauty of cold, the beauty of fog, the beauty of that cold temperature, and not cry and think about the sun that is not there. Not talk about the negatives. The world is full of dualities. In every incident, in every circumstance, there is a beauty and there is something that is not that beautiful. It always is. Either you can focus on the beauty that is there and enjoy it and be happy in that, because when that goes, and the positives that you're thinking about, that summer that you are missing, when that summer comes, naturally in that summer, then you're going to be crying about how harsh the heat is. Correct? And then you will crave for the rain. Then the rain will come. Then you will cry about, oh, it is raining all the time. I can't go outside. My clothes are not getting dried. So every moment, either we can think about the negatives and cry about it, or we can look at the positives with that situation that come and enjoy those positives and know that this too shall pass. Might as well enjoy this beauty that is coming with it, because that the beauty will, when that beauty will pass eventually. And a person who is detached from these VVGPs can enjoy all the seasons for the beauty that is, without being attached to it, without trying to hold on to it. Oh, in the rainy season, there is this perfect little thing when it is cool and it is beautiful and I can go out and it is not raining. Instead of, like, holding on to that one perfect little moment that is perfect for me, you will enjoy whether it rains, whether it snows, whether it is hot, because there is something to be enjoyed in all of them without trying to hold on to it. No, it will come, it will pass, and I will enjoy it and be happy in every circumstance. This is the attainment of the yogi. He's happy in every circumstance, no matter what. And his energies are so strong. His ability to harness his mental, spiritual, emotional energies is so strong that he knows what to focus on. His mind will not keep wavering between, oh, I'm happy now, I'm unhappy now, oh, I wish this, I wish that. No, he's able to harness and he's able to focus. This is the thought I want to focus on, this is the outcome I want to focus on, this is the beauty I want to focus on, and just stay in that eternal space of beauty and act from that space of beauty and happiness and calmness to create whatever else needs to be created. That is the outcome of our meditative practice, the nididhyasan, the manan. Okay. Anmol, will you read the next one? It's the last one. We'll quickly finish this.
Such a yogi derives happiness in the world.
Sarvabhutastamatmanam.
Sarvabhutastamatmanam.
Sarvabhutani chatmani.
Sarvabhutani chatmani.
Ikshate yoga yuktatma.
Ikshate yoga yuktatma.
Sarvatra samadarshanaha.
Sarvatra samaddarshana.
Bhutastham is established in all beings. Atmanam is capital S self. Sarva Bhutani, in all beings. No, sorry, all beings. Cha is and. Atmani is in the self. Ikshate, dekhta hai, sees. Yoga Yuktatma, a person whose mind is established by yoga in the Lord. Sarvatra, everywhere. Samadarshanaha, evenness of vision.
With the mind established by yoga in the harmonious perfection of self, the yogi enjoys an evenness of vision by seeing the self in all beings and all beings in the self. The evenness of vision of the unified yogi everywhere. A yogi having the evenness of vision sees the self in all beings and sees all beings as different manifestations of oneself. Due to this evenness of vision, the sense of something being favorable and something unfavorable is completely eradicated. To such a man, everyone appears as a manifestation of the same self. This unified identity enables him to see everyone as his own self. The expectation of happiness from anyone gives place to a solicitude for the happiness of everyone. There is no place for affinity for some and aversion to others in his heart, which is full of goodwill for everyone. Just as different pieces of ice have nothing but water in them, similarly, he sees the same self in different forms of creation. Ornaments made of gold have different forms and shapes and are worn on different parts of the body. But for the purpose of valuation, they are regarded as only gold. In the same manner, the yogi sees the same self pervading all. While dreaming, a person is affected by the various impressions of the dream. But on his waking up, the dream appears to be a play of his own mind. The yogi, having evenness of vision, is also like one awakened from the dream of the world.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually a pretty big shloka. We'll just do a couple of major points and we'll cover it again. Like let's read it again in the next class because there's a lot here to unpack. But just a couple of important things that we will cover today, and before this we'll close the class, is evenness of vision. What does evenness of vision mean? Is samta in see bhav mein samanta, vyavahar mein bhinnata. So attitude is going to be the same, but physical action in how we express that attitude towards different VVGP is going to be slightly different, right? For example, love thy neighbor. So the way you love your children, the way you love your parents, the way you will love your your spouse, the way you will love your neighbor is going to be slightly different. Your behavior is going to be that love or that attitude is going to be expressed slightly differently. Doesn't mean that you will act with everyone in the same manner. Like you will take care of your foot, you will take care of your eyes, you will take care of your head, you will take care of your hands. Yeah, you love them with all the same reverence because they all are required for you to live a healthy life. But the way you will take care of your eyes, which are more delicate, is going to be different from the way you will take care of your feet, which are more resilient, right? So the vyavahar is going to be different. Vyavahar mein bhinnata, but the attitude is that I need to take care of all of them. Correct? So that is important to remember in this. That is evenness of behavior. Okay. So so we will touch upon this in a lot more detail in the next class, because we need to understand what it means or how we get to this evenness of vision and why we do not have that evenness of vision today. What will cause us to have that evenness of vision, that path we will start to visualize in the next class. Okay. We'll close the class here. Shouldn't have started it, but it's okay. So we'll do the closing shlokas. We have the closing shlokas are fairly straightforward. Would anyone want to do all the ending shlokas today? Rituj, would you like to do the ending shlokas? And we'll close with the 3 ohms, right?
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्युर्माम् अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ